Look at this image. What do you see? Do you consider the way it's designed as a just fair trick to get attention in a crowded marketplace? Or do you find it offensive and making you reluctant to buy any product from this company? Or this screen dump of a leading Chinese website? Do you find the design cluttered? Or is it in your view a perfectly good example of a great and thought through UX which is easy to navigate and find your way around in? Or maybe this image of a Palestinian Hamas supporters holding a mock Hamas rocket. What do you see? Do you see terrorists or a fair protest against the suppressing an illegal occupation of Palestinian soil? Or the color white, as in this white dress. Does white in this dress for you represent purity and calm? Or does this dress in white give you the chill and a sense of death? As these examples show, images and designs pleasing to one group of people may seriously offend many others, and the reason for this is different cultural perspectives of the viewer. So, what is culture? Historically, the word culture has been linked to the classic arts, literature, music, and often has been expressed as the best that has been thought and said. But culture also has an anthropological definition which refers to the shared practices and values of a society or group of people. Within the anthropological discourse of culture, culture is created through intricate structures of language, gestures, acting and looking, and is represented through the actions which individuals use to make sense of reality and their identity. So, in simple terms, culture within this discourse can be defined as any group of people able to express thoughts, feelings, and ideas about the world in ways which can be understood by everyone else in that particular group. Within the anthropological definition of culture, objects in themselves also do not have a single fixed meaning, and even something obvious as a rock can be defined as anything from a hammer, maybe a sculpture, or a building block for a house, depending on how the term stone or rock is used, and the context where it is found, how you integrate with it, and also what people say about it. So, how is culture actually measured? Well, there are many ways of doing so, and every time you use Google, your culture is actually measured and analyzed, and two different Google users performing the same search might get to very different search results. This can be seen in this image, which shows the landing page for the search term Egypt during the Arabic Spring protest. The right search results, as can be seen, for one user display only travel information, while the second user gets information about the political events. Anyone who is an Amazon customer will recognize the fact that their buying recommendations and Amazon content might look very different from the Amazon experience of friends or other family members. Your Amazon page, for example, might be full of cool technical appliances, while, as can be seen here, mine is mostly about baby products and diapers. In digital marketing, adapting content and search results to the culture of the viewer is now well-established and accepted methods to give users more relevant search results and user experiences. And with the millions of new websites published each day, may be a necessity. This process in digital marketing and search is what has become known as adaptive and personalized content. While the process of adapting content to the preferences of users or visitors differ between organizations using this methodology, for Google it includes building a cultural model of each user based on metrics including web user behavior, previous search results, web history, and social media activity, to name a few things. This data is then used to deliver personalized search results and, of course, a user-adapted experience. While adapting web content, such as search results and buying recommendations, is now well understood and established methodologies, less understood in digital marketing and search is the extent to which culture influenced the perception of design, which is illustrated well in this image of the websites of the Japanese and Greece government. As can be seen, the Japanese website has a much higher information density than the Greek counterpart. So what this simple example shows is the importance for marketers and designers to understand how culture affects the perception of design to be able to communicate efficiently and without misunderstandings. The objective of the cultural communication product of design is to build a model which define how cultural dimensions or audience segments experience design. A model which informs about how to adapt adverts and other communication assets to these variables. We want to build this model because by understanding how cultural groups differ in their perception of design, designers and marketers will be able to build trust, to communicate more efficiently, and to avoid non-intended misinterpretations of visual communication assets, which is quite common in cross-cultural communication. The first step in building a model which informs visual preferences of cultural dimensions is to perform a large-scale survey where participants first are classified into cultural categories. The framework which we have selected for doing this is the so-called five-factor model, which is one of the most widely accepted frameworks for factor analysis of personality and culture. In the second step, after participants have been categorized according to the five-factor model, each participant will be asked to evaluate design assets from the perspective of design variables such as colors, information density, and image framing. A factor analysis on the collected data will then be performed with the objective to define explicit design preferences of the cultural dimensions stated by the five-factor model. By understanding how the cultural dimensions of the five-factor framework differ in the perception of design, a model can be defined with explicit design guidelines for each dimension of this framework. The factor analysis also might reveal broad perception patterns of design preferences, and, for example, that certain demographics are represented above average in some dimensions. This then would enable a classification of design preferences based on broad demographic and psychographic data such as age, nationality, habits, and interests, which would be possible to identify by the same methods to what already is used in digital marketing to offer adaptive content, but which then can be used to deliver a personalized design, which is adapted to the cultural perception model of the viewer. As with any groundbreaking research, the objectives of the cultural communication project might not be achieved. It might simply be that the differences in the perception of design is non-significant between cultural dimensions. But if our hypothesis is correct, that differences in the perception of design is significant, and that a model can be built with explicit design guidelines how to adapt to these differences, then the cultural communication model of design has the potential to revolutionize the way design is created and how advertising and PR campaigns are performed.